get the Brazilian, something that I truly wish that I had done in my first pregnancy. I just want to debunk that right here, right now. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Julia, and today we're gonna be talking about my first birth experience over a whole year later. So yes, you did read the thumbnail correctly. I labored for 60 hours before ending in an unexpected C-section. So today I'm gonna give you all the details of what went down. So firstly, I really want this video to be an encouragement to any mamas out there who are freshly postpartum if you had a birth experience that is not what you wanted. Now, I didn't want to record this video so freshly after postpartum while I was still in the thick of processing everything, hence me waiting over a year to film this video. But I think there's such beauty in that because I want you to see somebody who has gone through the steps of processing and who has come out the other side and is now able to see the beauty in the birth, even though I know it truly feels like the trenches some days and it just feels all consuming and so defeating when you have just experienced something traumatic with your birth experience. I also want to say that while in this video I want to be real and honest and vulnerable, I also believe that there is such power in the words that we choose to speak over ourselves and over our situations. And I really think that there is a time and place to be completely transparent, to grieve, to, for lack of better words, to complain to somebody. However, I believe that that should be face-to-face with somebody who's very close with you. You pick maybe 2 or 3 close family members or friends that you share your heart with on exactly what has just happened to you, right? But I don't believe that this is the space for me to be kind of saying, woe is me, asking for your sympathy, making this seem like such a negative thing, when truly, I am so thankful to the Lord that I am okay and my baby is okay. Those really are the main things, which when you're freshly postpartum and have just had a traumatic experience, that kind of hurts to hear. It truly does. And I've been there. And now that I am a whole year postpartum, I feel that I can truly sense that feeling of letting go of that experience. So with all that being said, I want you to know that this was something very, very difficult that I had to go through, and something that took a very long time for me to process and to grieve the experience. However, this video is going to be much more to the point, exactly what happened in my birth, rather than getting all emotional and being upset about the experience. Now, I also want to say, if you are expecting, whether this is your first pregnancy or not, I do want to say that I would encourage you to continue watching. Something that I truly wish that I had done in my first pregnancy was watch videos of women with varying experiences with their labor and delivery. That way I wasn't caught so off guard when this situation happened to me. I am not saying that this is going to happen to you. I pray to God that it does not happen to you. However, I truly think that there is wisdom in hearing many different versions of what birth can look like, because it truly can go so many different ways. When I was pregnant, I very naively and ignorantly and arrogantly rejected the idea of a C-section and said, nope, that's not going to happen to me. And basically kind of had this mentality of saying, because I don't want it, it won't happen to me, which obviously is not the case. So I truly wish that instead of skipping the chapters on C-sections, instead of only watching vaginal birth vlogs and birth stories and things like that, I wish that I had watched various different experiences. That way I knew what to expect, because truly, when it comes down to it, you are not control in the moment, and you really have to release that up to the Lord. Okay, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get on into the video, and I'm gonna try to include little video snippets here and there from my labor and delivery. To be honest, there's not that much footage because things took so long, and yeah, it was just, you'll just see. Let's get into it. So I have my notes right here from when I was in labor and delivery. My sweet mother went ahead and she jotted down notes as things happened. And even though not everything is dictated on here, this is kind of what I'm going to use as a frame of reference, because there's so much that I don't remember, whether that's because I just happened to be in labor la la land, or because trauma kind of has affected my brain to forget things, which honestly, I think is a gift from the Lord that he allows us to forget things. And I truly think that's by his design. I think that birth, regardless of how it goes down, is hard. It's painful. And I think the Lord intentionally allows us to forget certain things so that we have a desire to continue procreating. So the baby's due date was December 10th, and early that morning between like 5 and 6 a.m. I started feeling contractions. I woke up to contractions essentially. And I remember that from the very start, they were consistent. It wasn't like I had a contraction and then another one didn't happen for an hour or hours later. They came on pretty consistently. They'd be between, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes apart. Even though it was irregular, they were coming on consistently and growing in pain. And it got to the point probably around like 6:30 a.m. where I said, okay, I'm not gonna get any more sleep. I've had my full night of sleep and I cannot sleep through these contractions. They truly, for me, from the very beginning, felt like very intense period cramps, like the most intense period cramps that I've ever experienced is how they began. My family loves me so much. I get better every single day. I get better every single day. I choose to feel happy. I choose to feel happy. So it was a huge blessing because my mom had actually come into town a few days before the due date, just in case I went into labor, which I did. So that was perfect. And she ended up making brunch for myself and for Ryan, which was so lovely. And probably around 1 p.m., I was having my contractions very regularly. They were 5 minutes apart already, lasting for about a minute and consistently getting more and more painful, as you would hope that they would, right? That's the progression. That's very normal. So around 1 p.m., they were definitely getting to the point where I was uncomfortable. I was having to lean over. I was having a lot of back labor. And I found that when my husband did the hip squeeze counter pressure, that was supremely relieving. I had him do that for hours of the labor. So at some point, I don't remember what time, I did hop in the shower because I knew I needed to do my hair, which thank goodness I had that intuition of, I should probably do my hair in case I'm at the hospital for several days, because I ended up being at the hospital for almost an entire week. So very thankful that I hopped in the shower, did my hair really quick. And I will say that the water was supremely relieving. I noticed that there was a dip in my contraction frequency as soon as I hit the warm shower. So 100% water is an amazing, amazing tool to utilize when you're in labor. Good morning. I am definitely in labor. I have been having contractions since sometime between 5 and 6 this morning, and it is now about 12. And yeah, I've just been vibing it out. I just took a shower and did my hair. So we're ready to go to the hospital whenever things get closer. Right now we're still kind of waiting for contractions to get a little bit more consistent. They have been quite close together, but I want to wait. I want to wait a little bit more. But here's a bump date. Here's the bump. Here's Daddy. And I know it seems like crazy that I'm wearing a dress. It's like, what are you doing? But honestly, this dress is so comfortable. It's just like a long dress like this. And I probably will bring it to the hospital, honestly, because like this will be so perfect for breastfeeding. It's just so easy to pull down. And I just feel really comfy, cozy in it. So then in the evening, kind of around sunset time, we decided to go for a walk around my apartment complex, which was really great. I really just wanted to keep moving and try to help baby to descend. And honestly, moving as much as I could was a good distraction for me as well through the contractions. So whenever I'd have a contraction, I would lean on the nearest car, the nearest tree, and then my husband would do the counter pressure on my hips. And another thing that I will mention, I don't remember if I was using it at this point, but I did utilize the labor comb, which it's literally just a hair comb. You can buy them anywhere. And you use counter pressure onto your palms. I don't know how it works, but it is so helpful. It is so helpful during labor. I will absolutely be using that again in my next labor. My baby is healthy and well. Everything is going exactly as it should. I believe in the power of positive thinking. I let go of fear. I am calm and confident. Okay. I am held in the embrace of my Creator, just as I hold my baby in my womb.
Breathe, breathe. Doing great.
You're so strong.
You are doing amazing.
Okay.
Great job.
So at this point, my contractions have been very consistent. They've been about 4 to 5 minutes apart, lasting a minute for hours at this point, okay? So they have really grown in intensity. I'm very uncomfortable. It's getting towards the evening time, and I'm thinking, okay, like we've still got a car ride to go to the hospital, and I don't want to be absolutely dying in the car. So at this point we decided to go. It was probably around 7:30 that we went to the hospital. And honestly, what we did that was so supremely helpful is I had my last contraction outside of the car. Everybody else was in there. The bags were packed, everything. I had my last contraction. I hopped in the car really quick and we zoomed to the hospital. It was only like a 20-ish minute drive, and I only ended up having like maybe 1 or 2 contractions in the car, which was such a blessing. I remember praying the whole time. I was like, please Lord, just hold my contractions off while I'm in the car, because sitting in an upright position was so uncomfortable for me. I remember the entire labor I was having to hang my belly, again because I was having such extreme back labor, which, spoiler alert, baby was OP. Baby was sunny side up, which is part of why I was experiencing such bad back pain. So once we got to the hospital, got to the correct floor, got checked into triage, it takes quite a while. So I think something that a lot of people don't realize, and maybe it differs hospital to hospital, but it took quite a while for me to get into triage. And once I did, they hooked me up to a monitor to check baby. Baby was doing great. And then they checked my dilation. And I remember saying to the nurse, I don't want to know. And she said, well, we have to tell you. And I said, okay, well. And guys, I was only at a 1. The heartbreak, the devastation of hearing that after an entire day of labor was so devastating, truly. I remember feeling just like, oh no, like this isn't supposed to happen. Like things are going slow. Things have progressed at the way that they were supposed to. I labored at home the entire day. I waited until things got quite intense. I waited till my contractions were the right interval, right? They tell you to come in that specific window, and I waited till the correct window, and I was only at a 1. So they graciously allowed me to walk around for a little bit, see if my dilation would progress a little bit, and they checked me again and it hadn't. So at that point, this was late that evening. So they said, you know, since things are looking like they're gonna go pretty slowly, we're gonna go ahead and send you back home. That way you're at your house and in the comfort of your own home to hopefully progress things along a bit rather than staying in the hospital. Which a lot of people will tell you that when you are in your hospital or birthplace or whatever it is, your body tends to tense up a little bit because it's not a familiar space, it's not your comfortable space, and you just feel more safe at home. So we decided to go home, and I remember that this was the only time in my labor experience that I had a breakdown. I had an absolute meltdown in the parking lot. I was so devastated to be sent home. Leading up to labor and delivery, I was like, God, I do not want to be one of those women that gets sent home. I will be so devastated. Like, I do not want to go through that emotional experience of having to get sent home. So I do remember that that was a very difficult moment emotionally in my labor, but then I got my big girl panties on, we got in the car, and we went back home. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest, that night is one of the specific times where I think the Lord has allowed me to forget, because what I do remember is it was the worst night of my life. It was truly the most excruciating pain I have ever been in. And again, my contractions were consistently getting stronger. They were getting closer together. My labor was progressing as normal, but my dilation was going very slow. So I just remember not getting any rest that night. I tried to lay down. I tried to be able to sleep in between contractions. that did not happen. Like I was just up all night long. Oh, it was terrible. In hindsight, I think instead of laying down, I should have kept moving around all night, but I really was trying to let my body rest in anticipation for delivery. So I remember also taking a bath that night. I remember that very vaguely, and I do remember that gave me quite a bit of relief, although it was still painful. I was still experiencing very severe contractions very regularly. And I was very much in labor land, very much trying to fixate on the affirmations that I had written for myself, focusing on my breathing, doing low moans. Like I was very much in labor land. So we continued like that the whole night long. Ryan was so sweet. He tried to rest. I really wanted him to rest because I knew he needed to be my emotional support when things were actually going to go down. But my screaming and moaning, I wasn't like screaming or anything, but you know, I was very vocal because I was in such pain that I would wake him up, and he was just so sweet saying, "You got this, babe, you can do it, you know, just keep breathing." And yeah, he was such a wonderful support that whole time. So the next morning we went back to the hospital. We probably got there around 11. And by the time I got checked into triage this time, I was dilated to a 4.75, basically almost a 5. That was a relief because that meant that I could be checked in to the hospital at that point. However, that still was quite disheartening knowing that was the only bit of progression that I had that entire more than a 12-hour stretch again. So now at this point, it's been well over 24 hours, and I am completely just trying so hard to do all the things that I can to get my dilation going. So now, like I said, this is December 11th. This is the next day. So a little bit after noon, I was finally checked into a labor and delivery room, and I remember a midwife came in and she massaged me, and it felt incredible. It was so helpful, and she coached me through a lot of my contractions, which was just kind of great for an emotional person to help support, and for Ryan to get to have a little bit of a break, even though he still was right there the entire time. He never left my side the entire time that I was in labor. So I don't remember at what point they discovered that baby was OP, but I remember I was walking laps in the hallway. I was doing lots of different movements and positions, and they had me doing just a lot of different things that I couldn't even tell you now because I don't remember. Like I said, I was very much in labor land, so a lot of this is extremely fuzzy. But I remember at some point in here, so now it's the afternoon, I said, "This is taking too long, and I'm gonna need that epidural now. I'm gonna need the drugs," because it has been, I wanna say it had been at least 35 hours of unmedicated laboring. And I said, we're clearly not even near the finish because my dilation is taking so long and I am in so much pain. I said, get me them drugs. So that was around 4 o'clock-ish, maybe a little bit before 4, that I got the epidural. And something that I didn't know is the epidural can take a while to kick in. I don't know if it's this way for all women, so you'll have to let me know in the comments down below if this was your experience as well. But the epidural didn't kick in for almost an hour, which, if you think about it, at the point that I had said, okay, I want the epidural, it took a while for the doctor to get there to even administer the epidural. And so then it took even longer after for the epidural to kick in. I was like, I'm ready to not feel anything. Like, this is crazy. The thing that's tricky is once you have the epidural, obviously you have to just be sitting there in bed. You can't be moving. So that almost an hour stretch of the epidural having not kicked in, but having to sit still in bed was so painful. And again, because I was experiencing back labor, I remember it just being awful. I think I have one little tiny video snippet that my mom took of one of my contractions before I was able to feel the epidural. Ow, ow, ow. 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 So probably by 5 p.m. this evening, I finally was pain-free. And I remember saying, okay, now I'm ready to get this party started. Now we can have some fun. And I just remember feeling so much relief and like, oh, like I can sleep. I can rest now if I need to. Like I'm gonna be able to store up some energy for the upcoming delivery. Something I wanna say about when you get the epidural is I hear a lot of talk about, oh, how many centimeters dilated did you make it to before you got your epidural? And I just want to debunk that right here, right now, because every woman's body is different. The number of centimeters you were at dilation or like dilated when you got your epidural has nothing to do with how tough you are, has nothing to do with your pain management, because it varies so drastically. Somebody like my case, my body was doing everything correctly. It was getting extremely intense contractions. They were extremely close together, you know, like it was progressing. It wasn't like I was just in early labor feeling only period cramps, you know, just because I was at a lower dilation. While yes, being further along dilated, of course there is a bit more pain associated with that, but everybody's experience is different. So let's eliminate that language, okay? Let's just let women handle birth the way that it happens. If they get the epidural, great. If you don't get an epidural, great. If you got a C-section, great. You are still just as much of a woman because you birthed a human being. So at this point, I did a lot of the fun things. So I had, before going into labor, created labor and delivery goodie baskets and postpartum goodie baskets. So I presented that basket to my team at this point once I was feeling good, and they loved it. This is not something that you have to do, but I recommend it so much as a thank you because they do so much to care for you during this time. And I just had it near the front of my room, and anytime a nurse or doctor came in, I said, hey, help yourself to anything in the basket. And they just loved that little pick me up and that little attention to detail. So I don't have this notated. I have no idea what time this happened, but I know at some point the doctors did suggest for me to manually have my water broken so that hopefully that would encourage things to progress a little bit faster. So I gave my consent for that and we went ahead and did it. And yeah, like I said, I have no idea what time that was, but I know it was sometime after the epidural because I didn't feel it. So at this point, again, it's a waiting game. Like I'm just in bed. I remember that even though I had the epidural, they were doing everything possible to get me into various positions to help baby to descend correctly and to help things to go more properly. I remember at one point there was one position that was so uncomfortable. Basically, I had to scoot all the way down to the bottom of the bed and dangle my bottom half down off the bed with my torso still up on the bed. So if you think about that, I've got this gigantic belly in front of me and I'm like dangling my legs and butt basically off the edge of this bed. And these aren't things that you're holding for 5 minutes. This is like you're holding these positions for 30 minutes to an hour or more, trying to do all of these different things to get baby to turn and get baby to engage correctly in my pelvis. And I remember at one point this evening, we were thinking like, okay, baby's probably gonna be born in the middle of the night and the kitchen will be closed. So mom, how about you go to Panera and get us sandwiches? That way we can all eat, you know, once the baby is here and born, you know. And spoiler alert, baby did not come that night. Baby would not come until the next night. This is such a random detail, but I do remember that there was a TV in the room. And I just remember because it was near Christmas time, I remember it was on a holiday Christmas movie channel. And I remember it would play Elf and it would play Christmas Vacation movie. Like it had like a rotation of movies. At the start of each movie, I remember thinking, okay, maybe by the end of this movie, we'll have the baby. Okay, maybe by the end of this movie, we'll have the baby. Okay, maybe by the end of this movie, we'll have the baby. And I just remember going through that loop over and over and over again throughout that entire night. Clearly it didn't happen, but hey, now I have Elf memorized. So now it's the next day, it's December 12th, and I had spent the whole night kind of trying to sleep, still doing various positions. They would put me in a position and then I would try to sleep in that position as best as I could. Then they'd come back maybe an hour later, put me in a new position, and then I would again try to sleep for a little bit. And we did that all night long. So again, it's now December 12th, and I remember coming out of one position early in the morning, probably around 7. I somehow pulled a muscle in my upper back. Don't know how, but I remember being in excruciating pain. I guess I just somehow kinked my back / like shoulder blade somehow in the process of everything. So at that point, I remember that the nurse gave me some type of pain relieving medicine to help me not to feel that muscle ache anymore, which was such a relief. And sometime that morning, they checked me again for my dilation and I was at a 7. Now, I don't have very many dilation checks notated in my notes. I don't remember if there were more than what is written here, but I do remember that leading up to labor and delivery, I had made it known that I did not want my dilation checked super frequently. Like I wanted it to be kind of an irregular thing just because I wanted to be able to do what I needed to. I wanted to be able to just not be in my head and just feel what my body needed to do for birth. So at this point, my epidural was wearing off, so we had to have the anesthesiologist come back in and re-administer some of it, which again is another thing that I think people don't tell you, and perhaps it's because maybe people's epidurals, they don't need it for quite as long as I did. I obviously had it the day before, and now we're getting into the next day, and so I needed more. Yeah, I was very surprised by how much tweaking the epidural took. Like it needed some babysitting a little bit to make sure we were on top of the pain. So we continued all day doing the various positions. Again, I don't want to be redundant, but this was constantly going around and around doing these various positions in a cycle, essentially trying to get things going. And I remember a midwife who was not on the clock. Her shift was over, but I had gone to a couple of her different classes. She came in and she was a godsend. She was so encouraging to me. She came and she just helped me both emotionally and physically as I was laboring. And I just remember that being so touching to me that she would spend that time with me when she could have been going home to her family. Her shift was over. She wasn't even supposed to come into my room, but she remembered me from the classes. And yeah, I just will forever remember her. So sometime in the evening, probably 5 something, I remember one of the doctors came in and said, "Julia, it's been too long. We're going to have to do a C-section." And essentially it was, you've been laboring too long. Your water has been broken too long. The baby monitor, it looks like baby is starting to react negatively to the birth. Like baby is becoming a little bit distressed because this was a toll on baby's body as well. Like this was not easy. This was rough for her as well. She's getting all squished up in there. So I do remember that when that news was given to me, I did feel an immense amount of peace and just immediately gave my consent, like, okay, like you're right. It's been too long. So at that point, I want to say that I had been about somewhere between a 9 and a 10. I want to say I was a little bit over 9 centimeters dilated and I had been stuck there for a bit. Again, I don't have that notated, but I stalled out essentially. Baby was not coming down and had gotten stuck in the sunny side up position. So at this point, after I had gotten the news about needing the C-section, I remember my mom came over to me and started to speak something over me. I have no idea what. I don't remember what she was saying, but it was something lovely. It was something encouraging, like probably trying to comfort me. And I remember that was the only time I ever semi-snapped at somebody. I said, "Don't, I will cry. Do not talk to me right now." Which really in hindsight is not that bad. I clearly needed to communicate that is not what I needed in the moment, because I knew that if I let myself go to that emotional space of being disappointed, that I wouldn't have been able to hunker down and be well during the moment, if that makes sense. Basically, I knew that if I started crying, I would not be able to stop. And so I was doing everything in my power to just focus on the Lord and to be praying. And I just needed quiet in that time. Now, I will say one of my big prayers leading up to labor and delivery is that I would be a light. Even as a birthing mom, I did not want to be one of those women who nurses and doctors are scared to come into the room because you're so mean to them. I did not want to be one of those women who uses labor as an excuse to shout profanities. I wanted to truly just exude the Holy Spirit, and I just wanted it to be a loving environment, and I wanted to genuinely exude kindness to everybody. So I will say that is one of the huge prayers that the Lord answered, and I'm so grateful for that. And that is one of my prayers going forward with this labor and delivery that's upcoming, is that I want to do that again. I feel that I had such great connections with the nurses and doctors that came in, every single one of them. I feel there was such a mutual respect and almost love there. I know that sounds ridiculous because it's their job, like this is their profession, but it did feel like there was this deep connection there because of the way that I spoke to them, the way that I treated them. So if you're an expecting mama, I encourage you to pray this over yourself. I encourage you to be a light, to be positive as you're going through your birth experience, and to be kind to those who are trying to help you through this experience. They haven't done anything to you. Your body is doing something to you, you know? So they're trying to help you. Try to be as kind and loving to them as you possibly can. So once the decision for the C-section took place, everything kind of happened in a blur. It was very quick. They moved me quickly to OR. I remember this kind of feeling exactly like it does in the movies, like being rushed there. I remember being like, where's my husband? Where's my husband? What's going on? Like, this is just a lot, right? I'm being like rushed out of this calm, darker room into these bright lights in this room. I hear all this talking around me. They're whipping this sheet up in front of me. I just remember everything happening quite quickly. And because I'd already had the epidural, I remember that the way that they administered the drugs would be different if I had been unmedicated up until this point. So I think that they basically just upped my epidural and made sure that I could not feel anywhere up in my stomach. And the way that they did this is they put an ice cube, and I had to tell them if I could feel the ice cube or not. Once I couldn't feel the ice cube, then they knew that it was numbed correctly. And here's a hilarious tidbit for you. Forgive me if this is TMI, but we're going there. I heard one of the doctors or nurses behind the sheet say, okay, can somebody grab a razor? And then one of the doctors who was actually near me, or nurses or whoever, said, nope, we won't need one for her. Because, you guys, I had gotten a full Brazilian 2 weeks before. 10 out of 10 recommend. Whether you were going to have a vaginal birth or a C-section birth, with postpartum and how all of that goes and just how messy all of birth and postpartum is, girl, get the Brazilian. Get it. Just get it. That's all I'm gonna say. Just get the Brazilian. So at this point, I already feel them cutting into me. Like, I already feel them doing the movements, and I don't know, there's really nothing that I can use to describe the feeling of a C-section. Basically, you feel them doing everything, but it doesn't hurt. So I could feel that a knife was cutting across my skin. I could hear it, I could smell it. Unless you've been awake for a surgery, which now I've been awake for 2 surgeries, which that's a whole other story. But being awake while someone is operating on you is one of the most bizarre sensations ever. Unless you experience it yourself, you just will never understand. But I remember them already cutting into me. I remember laying there, and I remember going, where's my husband? Where's my husband? And I remember it feeling like I was yelling, but I could hear that my voice was coming out almost at a whisper, like very, very quiet. And I remember that just being so scary. Like, no one could hear me because they were all talking and doing what they needed to do, because this was, at this point, an emergency C-section. They were trying to get baby out to save her life, right? And it wasn't that dire. It wasn't like she was dying in this moment, but her heart rate was declining. So I remember that everything was quite rushed. And at this point, my drugs from the back pain that I had experienced, that was wearing off. So I was screaming in pain from that. And I remember them being very concerned because they thought that I was feeling things, but I was feeling the pain from the muscle that I pulled in my back. So I feel them doing what they're doing down on my belly. And then finally, I remember Ryan was brought in, and it was basically because they were having to scrub him in. He was having to sanitize, do all of the things, and then he was brought back to me. It probably was a matter of minutes that we were separated, but it felt like an eternity. That is the only time that Ryan was not near me for the entire labor and delivery experience. And let me tell you, that moment was the scariest part for me, because I just felt so alone and so terrified. And I remember laying on the table and thinking that I was going to die in that moment. Like, I remember thinking, like, I'm not gonna make it. And I don't know why, but I just remember praying and saying, like, God help Ryan raise this baby well. Like, truly, I did not think I was gonna make it, because it just felt so not like what I had read, what I had watched of other people's birth experiences. It just felt so out of body. So finally, all that being said, Adelaide was born at a little bit after 6 p.m. and they brought her around. Ryan got to announce the gender to me, because up until that point, we did not know. We had waited until birth. And so he said, it's a girl, it's a girl. And they immediately took her over to the pediatricians that were in the room. Because another thing I forgot to mention is that she had started breathing in the womb. She started breathing in some of the meconium, so they had to check her right away. They had to take her, which is something that I also did at birth. So she took after her mama, which I wish she had not, but she did. They took her immediately away, which was very difficult, very bizarre, because all I hear is it's a girl and then like nothing. And I'm like waiting to hear her cry. I remember even saying, why can't I hear her? Why can't I hear her? I remember being so afraid because I hadn't seen her. I didn't hear anything, you know, and I'm like, did something go wrong? And I remember one of the nurses who was near me said, it's okay, it can just take a minute, which it can, you know, and I knew that, but it feels so scary when it's in the moment. The seconds can feel like an eternity in that moment.
What do we have?
Okay. Sometimes it takes a minute for them to perk up, okay?
Oh, so excited. We get to use all those bows now.
And then I remember finally hearing her cry, which was just the sweetest.
Oh.
You hear that, babe?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, baby.
She's crying for you. Babe, you can feel white down there. Where's my mama?
Oh. Oh, you're very close to me.
I'm sorry.
And then once they did all of the checks that they needed to with the pediatricians, then they quickly swaddled her up, got a hat on her, because the OR, if you didn't know, if you've never been in an OR, freezing. It's like a refrigerator in there. It is absolutely frigid. So they wrapped her up really quick and they brought her over. And I just remember looking, I was laying down. I remember looking to my left and they pretty much had her like right up next to me like this. So like if you think about that, like if you were to hold a baby doll up to your face like this, you can't really see it because it's just too close to your face. You know what I'm saying? Like, so her head was right here, but I was at least like able to kind of put my hand over her chest and like talk to her a little bit, which was really sweet.
That photos, honestly.
Oh goodness, she's just looking. My gosh. Oh, she got the granite. Oh, she's ready. Hey. She has the most precious cheek.
So they let me do that for, I don't know, a minute or two before they had to take her to the NICU. Everything after that is very much a blur. I don't know if I fell asleep. I have no idea what happened following this. I know that Ryan went with Addie to the NICU, which was great that they got to be together. But then again, that left me alone, which I remember being, again, very scary. But like I said, I'm pretty certain that I fell asleep somewhere in there when I was on the table and they had to patch me up and everything, which is a gift, which is a very good thing. And I did not wake up until I was in recovery. And I remember being supremely groggy and just like, what's going on? Where is Ryan? Where's my baby? Like, what's happening? I was in a room. Thank the Lord my mom was there. I wasn't sure if I wanted to have anyone other than Ryan at my birth, but kind of in the months leading up to my labor and delivery, I just had this feeling that I should have my mom there. Thank God I did. I will be inviting my mom to all of my births because if God forbid, if anything like that birth were to happen again, I need my mom there because I would have been in that recovery room alone by myself when I was waking up, and that would have been awful. So my mom was right there when I woke up, which was so wonderful. She was able to say like, it's okay, the baby's okay, Ryan's with her. And actually at that point, my mom didn't even know what the baby was. No one had told her. But I remember something so sweet is one of my nurses from a couple nights before when I was in labor came in and checked on me for her new shift, and she just spoke encouragement over me. And you know, I remember that being a very powerful moment as well, even though I have no idea what she said. It's all very groggy for me, like I said. I have no idea, but I just remember it being very impactful and meaning a lot to me. So I didn't get to fully see Addie until about a little bit over 2 hours after her birth. I was finally able to be wheeled down to the NICU, which was such a long time to have to wait, and just feels so bizarre to have birthed a human and to have to wait like that was just really crazy.
That's your baby.
going back to pack you real quick, but I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
In hindsight, you know, I'm so thankful that Addie was okay, that I was okay. The Lord really had his hand on the whole situation. Even though it's not the way I wanted it to happen, it still ended up being a beautiful experience. And I would do it again. I would do it again in a heartbeat for my Addie girl, because she is just the greatest gift I've ever received. So something else that was super duper sweet is my in-laws actually, we didn't know this, but they were in town. They actually lived between like an hour and 2 hours away, but they had come to town for me being in labor so that they could meet the baby. So that was really sweet. They got to go to the NICU and see her and meet her very freshly after she came out, which was really nice. And yeah, it was just very lovely, very beautiful. If you guys want a video on my postpartum experience, let me know down below. Because like I mentioned earlier, I had to stay in the hospital for almost an entire week. So there were several days of postpartum that I spent in the hospital. So if you'd like me to speak on that experience, then just let me know. All right, you guys, Addie actually just woke up from her nap, so I'm going to end the video here. But I hope that it blessed you. If you are a mama who has just gone through a very difficult birth experience, or it just wasn't what you had hoped, I truly want you to know that it does get better with time dedicated specifically to the Lord. I will say that I don't believe that time heals all wounds. I believe that Jesus heals all wounds. So if you truly do the work and give it up to him, spend time in the word, spend time in prayer and worship, and truly discipline your mind and your heart to see the goodness in your experience, even though it is completely valid that it was hard, and it was completely valid that it hurt you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever it was. Those feelings are all valid, but I implore you to give those feelings up to the Lord. Do the work that you can to try to make the best out of the experience that you had. If you are an expecting mama and you have an upcoming labor and delivery, again, I really hope that this did not scare you, but I hope that it just showed you a way that labor and delivery can look for some people, just so that you know that things can happen that are out of your control. If you can do the work while you're in pregnancy to release some of that control and know that you can do the right things, you can do the right exercises, you can eat the right things, you can do as much as you can to prepare, I truly implore you to hold it with open hands, knowing that ultimately you are not in control of the experience, and what is going to happen is what will happen. And there can be such peace and freedom in that. It shouldn't be something that scares you. It should be something that you can find relief and joy and a weight lifted from knowing that it's not in your hands. As always, you can feel free to leave a comment or send me a DM of any prayer requests that you have specifically. And this is not very common, but I'm gonna actually ask for a prayer request that if you could be praying for my upcoming labor and delivery, I would ask that you could pray for peace over my mind and my heart. Everything that I was just saying about surrendering this up to the Lord, this is a very real season that I'm working through right now, is trying to make sure I'm not going into this next labor and delivery holding on to any fear or any anxiety or any control, because ultimately, as I saw from this past birth experience, I don't have control. Always feel free to follow me on Instagram at Julia_Zanuski. I'm much more up to date on there, so you will be much more caught up on my life if you follow me over there. Thank you guys again so much for watching this video, and have a blessed day. Bye.